Welcome back to DKing Combat Podcast. I'm your host, Saad, founder of DKing Combat System. And today, we're talking about something that affects every single human on this planet. Not just fighters, not just soldiers, not just athletes, everyone. The topic today is fight, flight, freeze. Why good people fail when it matters most. And before we begin, I want you to think about a moment in your life, a moment where everything changed. Maybe it was a phone call, maybe it was an accident, maybe it was a betrayal, maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was losing a job. Maybe it was a confrontation. Maybe it was standing in front of a crowd with your heart pounding so hard you thought everybody could hear it. Think about that moment. Now, ask yourself honestly, what did you do? Did you fight? Did you run? Or did you freeze? Most people believe they know how they will react under pressure. Most people imagine themselves as heroes inside their own minds. The problem is that life doesn't care about imagination. Life doesn't test your intentions. Life tests your reactions. And reactions are very different from intentions. I have met people who looked tough and fell apart the moment real pressure arrived. I have met quiet people who surprised everybody when things got difficult. I have met strong people who froze. I have met scared people who stepped forward when everybody else stepped back. Because when pressure arrives, something deeper than your ego takes control. Something older than your beliefs. Something older than your confidence, something older than your excuses, your survival system. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The biggest lie people believe, that people tell themselves this: I'll know what to do when the time comes. Okay, this is one of the biggest lies that people tell themselves. Oh, I will know when the time comes, we will see. No, you won't. Not automatically. Because pressure doesn't create character. Pressure reveals character. And pressure also reveals preparation. Imagine somebody who has never been in a fight, never been shouted at, never dealt with confrontation, never faced violence, never experienced chaos. Then one day, someone becomes aggressive towards them, their heart rate spikes, their breathing changes, their hands shake, their vision narrows, their thoughts become scattered, and suddenly all the clever things they imagined saying disappeared. Why? Because reality is different from imagination. The body doesn't care what you rehearsed in the shower. The body responds to perceived danger. This happens everywhere, not just in combat. It happens in business, it happens in relationships, it happens in emergencies, it happens in hospitals, it happens during financial disasters, it happens when somebody receives terrible news. And that's why today's conversation matters. Because understanding fight, flight, and freeze can change how you view your entire life. The human brain is incredible, but it wasn't designed primarily for happiness. It wasn't designed primarily for comfort, and it was designed for survival. I always say that. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors faced dangers every single day: predators, wars, famine, disease, natural disasters. Death wasn't a possibility, it was a daily reality. So the human nervous system evolved to protect us. And when danger appears, the brain immediately asks one question: how do we survive this? Not do we look cool. Okay, this looking cool culture is really not good. Okay, not what would social media think, not how do I protect my reputation. The brain asks, how do we stay alive? And that's where fight, flight, and freeze comes from. Fight is the response most people admire. It's action, it's confrontation, it's moving toward the problem, it's resistance. When danger appears, some people become aggressive. Their body prepares for conflict. Heart rate increases, adrenaline surges, muscles tense, focus sharpens. The body prepares for battle. In modern life, this can show up in many ways: a business owner fighting to save a company, a parent protecting a child, a person standing up against injustice, a fighter stepping into competition. Fight isn't always violence. Sometimes fight is simply refusing to quit. Sometimes fight means getting back up after life knocks you down. Flight, on the other hand, is different. Flight says, this situation is dangerous. Leap, let's run. Again, this is not weakness, it's survival. If you are unarmed and facing multiple attackers, running might be the smartest decision. If you are in a toxic environment, leaving might be the smartest decision. If a business partnership is destroying your future, walking away might be the smartest decision. Flight is not cowardice. Sometimes flight is wisdom. The problem is that many people misunderstand flight. They think avoiding discomfort is the same thing as avoiding danger. And that's where problems begin. Because many people spend their lives running from things that could help them grow. They run from rejection, they run from responsibility, they run from difficult conversations, they run from opportunities, they run from change. And eventually, they become prisoners of avoidance. Now, let's talk about the response nobody wants to admit: freeze. Freeze, because this is where today's episode truly begins. Freeze is misunderstood. So, most people think freezing means weakness. It doesn't. Freezing is a survival response. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed. The brain struggles to process what's happening. For a moment, action stops. You know what needs to be done, but nothing happens. Your body feels heavy. Your thoughts become chaotic. Your decision making disappears. You become stuck. And what's frightening is that many good people experience this, including me. Not because they are bad, not because they are weak, not because they are cowards, but because they were never prepared for that level of pressure they suddenly encountered. So, this is the heart of today's episode. Why do good people fail when it matters most? The answer isn't usually lack of intelligence. It isn't usually lack of morals. It isn't usually lack of talent. Often, it's because they never trained under pressure. Think about this. A person can be kind, honest, intelligent, hardworking, generous, and still completely collapse when life becomes chaotic. Because goodness and preparedness are not the same thing. You can be a good person and still panic. You can be a good person and still freeze. You can be a good person and still make terrible decisions under stress. The world often assumes that characters automatically creates competence, but that's not true. Competence must be developed and pressure exposes the gap. The reality is this: most people spend their lives preparing for comfort, not pressure. School teaches information but rarely teaches crisis management. Many jobs teach technical skills but rarely teach emotional resilience. Social media teaches comparison but rarely teaches courage. People learn how to look successful but not how to remain calm when everything falls apart. And then one day life arrives. Not the version from motivational quotes, not the version from movies, the real version, the messy version, the painful version, the unpredictable version. And suddenly they discover something uncomfortable. They are not reacting the way they imagined they would. That realization can be devastating. But it can also be the beginning of growth because awareness is where transformation begins. As we end this part, I want you to think about your own life. Where do you fight? Where do you run? Where do you freeze? Not where you wish you did, not where you pretend you do. Where do you actually do it? Because self awareness is the first step towards mastery. And in the next part, we are going to go much deeper. We are going to talk about why freezing happens in business, in relationship, in combat, leadership, and everyday life. We're going to talk about why intelligent people sometimes make terrible decisions under pressure. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to train yourself to do when life tests you. You don't become another victim of the freeze response. Because pressure is coming for me, for you, for everyone listening. The question is not whether the test will arrive. The question is, who will you become when it does? Now, let's go deeper. Because understanding fight, flight, and freeze is one thing. Understanding how it quietly controls your life is something completely different. Most people think these survival responses only appear during extreme situations. A robbery, a physical attack, a life threatening emergency. But that's not true. For many people, fight, flight, and freeze happens every single day. The difference is that the danger is psychological instead of physical. The body cannot always tell the difference. To your nervous system, losing your job can feel like a threat. Public humiliation can feel like a threat. Financial collapse can feel like a threat. Being rejected by someone you love can feel like a threat. Standing in front of an audience can feel like a threat. The modern world changed. The nerve system did not. And that's why so many people are walking around trapped inside survivor mode without realizing it. Let me give you an example. Imagine a business owner. For years, things are going well. Clients are coming, bills are being paid, life feels stable. Then suddenly the market changes. Sales slow down, expenses increase, cash flow becomes tight, the pressure begins building. At first, he tells himself everything is fine. Then the situation becomes worse. Now he knows he must act. He needs to market more, improves his offer, make difficult decisions, maybe even reinvent part of the business. But instead of acting, he freezes. He spends hours thinking, hours worrying, hours scrolling, hours and hours of discussing problems. Yet, no action happens. Not because he is lazy, not because he is stupid, because the pressure became overwhelming. And when pressure overwhelms the nervous system, people often stop moving. The tragedy is that from the outside it looks like procrastination. Inside, it feels like paralysis. Many people listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about because you have experienced it yourself. Let's look at relationships. A couple has problems, the signs are obvious, communication is deteriorating, resentment is growing, distance is increasing. Both people know something is wrong. Both people know a difficult conversation is necessary. Yet neither person initiates it. Why? Because confrontation feels dangerous. The nerve system interprets emotional conflict as a threat. So instead of addressing the problem, people avoid it. Days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years, until one day the relationship collapses. People often say, I didn't see it coming. But many times they did see it coming. They just froze when action was required. One of the greatest misconceptions in society is that intelligence protects you from pressure. It doesn't. I have met highly educated people who completely fell apart under pressure. I have met people with multiple degrees who couldn't make a decision when everything became uncertain. I have also met people with very little formal education who remained calm during absolute chaos. Because pressure is not an intelligence test, pressure is a nervous system test. Knowledge matters. Don't take it wrong, knowledge matters. But regulation matters too. When stress becomes overwhelming, the thinking part of the brain becomes less effective. Suddenly, logic disappears, reasons disappears, perspective disappears, and survival takes over. This is why smart people sometimes make decisions that seems unbelievably foolish afterwards. They were not thinking clearly. Their survival system was driving the vehicle. There's another form of freezing that is extremely common today. It's not dramatic, it's not obvious, and that's what makes it dangerous. It's the freeze response disguised as comfort. You know you should start the business, but you keep researching. You know you should make the phone call, but you wait another day. You know you should apologize, but you delay it. You know you should begin training, but next week sounds better. You know you should change your life, but somehow tomorrow always feels more convenient. Years pass this way, not because people are incapable, because fear has disguised itself as logic, and the person never notices. This type of freezing does not ruin your life overnight, but it steals your future one day at a time. Every person eventually experiences a moment that exposes who they truly are. Not who they claim to be, not who they want to be, who they actually are. Sometimes it's a medical emergency, sometimes it's financial disaster, sometimes it's betrayal, and sometimes it's loss. Sometimes it's a situation where somebody else needs you, and suddenly there's no time to think, no time to prepare, no time to rehearse. Life asks, who are you right now? That moment is incredibly revealing because pressure removes mask, pressure removes excuses, pressure removes performance. What remains in your current level of preparation? Nothing more, nothing less. After years in martial arts, coaching, fitness, self defense, and combat sports, I have noticed something interesting. The people who perform best under pressure are not always the strongest, not always the fastest, not always the most talented. Often they are simply the most familiar with discomfort. They have experienced pressure before, they have felt fear before, they have made mistakes before, they have been tested before. The situation isn't new to them, and familiarity changes everything. The unknown creates panic, the familiar creates confidence. This is one reason training matters. Not because training removes fear, because training teaches you how to function despite fear. That's a massive difference. This may surprise some people, but fear is not your enemy. Fear is information. Fear is feedback. Fear is a signal. The problem is not fear. The problem is being controlled by fear. Every courageous person you have ever admired felt fear. Every successful entrepreneur, every fighter, every soldier, every leader, every parent, every person who stepped into uncertainty, fear came with them. The difference is that they acted anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. And that's where many people get stuck. They are waiting to stop feeling afraid before taking action. But life doesn't work that way. Action often comes first. Confidence comes later. I'll give you an example of my own. When I first time started fighting in a ring, like first ever fight, I cannot explain how my heart was pounding. It was almost like it's gonna come out from my mouth. Then I step in the ring, still same thing. I could hear my heartbeat. But as soon as the fight started, the first punch got thrown, all fear disappeared. I got so comfortable. So, I want you to think carefully about this. What area of your life are you currently freezing in? Is it your health, your marriage, your business, your finances, your faith, your relationships, your personal growth? What conversation are you avoiding? What decisions are you postponing? What opportunities are you refusing to pursue? Because the answer to that question might reveal exactly where your next level of growth is hiding. And it might also reveal the price you're paying for standing still. Because life rarely punishes us immediately. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes the consequences arrives years later. And by then the opportunity has already passed. Now that we understand why people fight, why people run, and why people freeze. We can move into the most important part of this conversation. How do we train ourselves to respond differently? How do we remain functional when pressure arrives? How do we prepare for the moments that matter most? Because understanding the problem is valuable, but transformation begins when we learn how to change our response. As I said, only knowing is not enough. You need to learn how to fix it. And that's exactly where we're going next. So now, we have arrived at the most important question. If fight, flight, and freeze are natural survival responses, if pressure can overwhelm even intelligent people, if good people can fail when it matters most, then what can we actually do about it? Because understanding a problem is useful, but understanding alone doesn't change your life. Awareness is the beginning. Training is what creates transformation. And that's something I have learned again and again through martial arts, self defense, coaching, business, relationships, and life itself. Nobody rises to their expectations, they rise to their training. And that's a lesson most people learn too late. Many people believe that when the moment arrives, they will somehow become the version of themselves they have imagined, the hero, the leader, the fighter, the calm decision maker, the courageous person. But life doesn't work that way. When pressure arrives, most people don't rise. They fall to their level of preparation. Think about comfort training. You will always fall to the level of your preparation. Okay? Let's say in combat training, you don't learn how to fight during the fight. You learn before the fight. The fight simply reveals what you have already built. Business works the same way. Leadership works the same way. Parenthood works the same way. Relationships work the same way. Pressure does not create your foundation. Pressure reveals your foundation. And that's why preparation matters so much. One reason martial arts can be so powerful is because they teach something deeper than techniques. They teach adaptation. The first time somebody tries to hit you, there's fear. The first time somebody pressures you, there's anxiety. The first time somebody grabs you unexpectedly, there's uncertainty. But over time, something changes. The nerve system begins to recognize the situation. The unknown becomes known. The frightening becomes familiar. And familiarity reduces panic. This principle applies everywhere, not just fighting, public speaking, sales, business, relationships, parenting, leadership. The more exposure you have, the more capable you become. Not because life gets easier, because you become more adaptable. It's the same thing with me. I'm doing this podcast. The more I'm doing, the better I'm becoming. It's same thing. There's a concept often used in military, law enforcement, emergency response, and high performance environments. It's called stress inoculation. The idea is simple. You expose yourself to manageable amounts of stress so that bigger stress becomes easier to handle later. Think of a vaccine. A small exposure helps prepare the body. Stress inoculation works similarly. You don't wait until a crisis arrives. You train before the crisis arrives. You voluntarily step into difficult situations. You challenge yourself. You practice functioning under pressure. And gradually, your capacity expands. This is one reason comfortable lives often create fragile people. Because comfort removes exposure. Without exposure, there is no adaptation. Without adaptation, there is no resilience. Let's talk honestly about comfort. Comfort itself is not evil. We all enjoy comfort. We all appreciate rest. We all need recovery. The problem is when comfort becomes a lifestyle instead of a reward. Because comfort has a hidden cost. It slowly reduces your tolerance for difficulty. A difficult conversation feels overwhelming. A business risk feels terrifying. Constructive criticism feels unbearable. Failure feels catastrophic. Why? Because you have spent years avoiding discomfort. The nervous system has become accustomed to safety. So when challenge appears, it feels much bigger than it actually is. This is why people who constantly seek comfort often becomes less capable over time. And people who deliberately challenge themselves tend to become more capable. Not because they are special, because the adaptation is built into human nature. I always tell people it's just how you adopt. It's always gonna work. Earlier, we talked about fight, flight, freeze, but there is another response that rarely gets discussed. And in my opinion, it's the most important one: adopt. Adaptation. Adaptation is what separates survivors from victims. Life does not always give you a fight you can win. Sometimes running is not possible. Sometimes freezing won't help. Sometimes circumstances completely change. And the only option left is adaptation. The business owner adapts to a changing market. The athlete adapts to injury. The parent adapts to a new responsibilities. The individual adapts after loss. The entrepreneur adapts after failure. The fighter adapts during the match. The strongest people I have met are not necessarily the toughest. They are the most adaptable. Because life constantly changes, and people who refuse to adopt eventually break. One thing I have noticed is that people often become trapped by their own identity. They tell themselves stories. I'm not confident. I'm bad with people. I'm not a leader. I'm not athletic. I'm not disciplined. I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm just unlucky. I heard this all. And be honest, sometimes we do the same thing. And after repeating these stories long enough, they stop being opinions. They become beliefs. That's very dangerous. Remember that. Then those beliefs become behaviors. Then those behaviors become reality. The person creates a prison and then convinces themselves they are trapped inside it. But here's the truth: most of those stories are outdated. Many of them were created years ago. Some were created by fear, some were created by failure, some were created by other people's opinion. Yet they continue controlling decisions today. If you want a different future, sometimes you must challenge the story you have been telling yourself. At some point, every person reaches a crossroad. You can continue blaming circumstances, or you can accept the responsibility. Responsibility doesn't mean everything was your fault. It means your future is your responsibility. And that's a powerful distinction. Maybe somebody betrayed you. Maybe somebody abandoned you. Maybe life was unfair. Maybe things happen that you never deserved. Those things may be true, but eventually a decision must be made. Will the past continue controlling the future? Or will you take ownership of what happens next? Because responsibility is where power begins. The moment you take responsibility, you regain influence, you regain direction, you regain control. One day, a test will come for everyone listening, not the test you expect, the one you don't. Life has a strange way of doing that. The phone call you never wanted, the news you never expected, the challenge you never prepared for, the responsibility you did not ask for. And in that moment, all the books, quotes, podcasts, and theories will become secondary. What matters then is your ability to respond. Can you think? Can you act? Can you adopt? Can you move forward despite uncertainty? That is the real question. Not whether life will test you. It will. The question is whether you are training for that day right now or not. As we close this episode, I want to leave you with something simple. Fight, flight, and freeze are not signs of weakness. They are signs of humanity. Every human being experiences them. The goal is not to eliminate them. The goal is to understand them, to train through them, to become aware of them, and ultimately to prevent them from controlling your life. Because the people who succeeded when it matters most are not always the most talented, not always the strongest, not always the smartest. Often they are simply the people who learned how to remain functional under pressure. The people who practiced before the moment arrived. The people who trained when nobody was watching. The people who became familiar with discomfort. The people who learned to adopt. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Life is unpredictable. Pressure is unavoidable. Fear is natural. But growth remains possible. Every single day. Every conversation. Every challenge. Every decision. Every step forward. You are training for the person you will become when the next test arrives. The question is, are you training consciously? Or are you leaving that future version of yourself to chance? Think about it. Thank you for listening to DKing Combat Podcast. If this episode make you think, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And remember, when pressure arrives, you don't become someone new. You reveal who you have been becoming all along. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and keep moving forward. This is Sat from the DKing Combat Podcast. Train your body, sharpen your mind, strengthen your spirit, because when life tests you, and it will, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of preparation. So keep training, keep growing, and keep becoming the person your future will depend on. Assalamu alaikum.